MiniWarGaming's The Utgard Infestation!
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and this is the first story time in a brand new 40k narrative campaign that we are starting called The Utgard Infestation. This campaign will be featuring Sisters of Battle, or the Adepta Sororitas as they're now called, as well as the Tyranids. Now, not the Tyranids as you normally see them, or as we have depicted them in previous campaigns, but we're actually going to be focusing a lot on a Gene Stealer cult. And once again, not as a Gene Stealer cult normally is seen. So I'm not going to give away too much at this point. I'm just going to start to tell you the story. This story actually starts on the hive world of Utgard. And this hive world is just a minor industrial world supplying munitions to the local Imperial Guard regiments as well as their regular ties of soldiers. So it is a hive world, so there's lots of people, billions of people on this world, even though it's not a forge world or something of that importance. But it is still very important to the Adepta Sororitas because there is a convent on this world led by the canonist commander Celine. Now, I'm going to go into more details in some of the storytime interludes as to the background of this convent. But suffice it to say that they actually operate close to the hive city of Scar. And what they are there for is because they are guarding a shrine that has a relic from one of the ancient Sisters of Battle, as we will talk about in one of the storytime interludes. But just realize that for now, this is a hive world that has a Sisters of Battle convent on it as well. So in our story, where it starts is that on this world there are some political difficulties, some political factions that are causing problems. And as it turns out, as the local garrison is trying to take care of this, as the local the authorities are trying to find out what is going on, they actually discover that there is a cult. What they believe at first to be a chaos cult, or at least a cult that's not loyal to the emperor. And so they start to investigate it and realize that it's, according to what they can find, it's actually been operating for years without the knowledge of the planetary governor or any of the upper authorities, or at least without what appears to be their knowledge, and without the knowledge of really coming to the Sisters of Battle. And so they then find it and discover it and decide that they obviously need to eradicate it before it gets too bad, because the last thing a planetary governor wants to deal with is a chaos cult on their planet. And so they start to send their forces to try to take it out, finding different bases of operation. And they do have some success in rooting out the cult, but in the end they find that the cult actually has infested pretty far in the underbelly of the main hive city of Scar. So in the lower levels. If you know anything about a hive city, it's built like this, where it goes really, really high up into the sky, and there are many, many, many layers that go deep underground as well. And especially because this is a munitions supply, they have factories that are producing all sorts of munitions. Those factories are everywhere. They're underground, they're above ground. It's just a mess. It's your typical crowded hive city that's just full of pollution and poverty and all the other wonderful grim darkness that is in Warhammer 40k. And so as the local authorities try to go and take out this cult in the underbelly of this hive, they have very little success. In fact, they find that they're actually getting overwhelmed, that they send in a force that should be plenty strong, because they have their own garrison of the Astra Militarum as well, the Imperial Guard forces that they send down there, but they keep getting repelled, or worse, totally destroyed in the strike forces they send in. So the planetary governor calls on the aid of Canoness Celine and her Sisters of Battle, or her battle sisters, because he realizes that, of course, they're going to have the firepower and the willpower and the determination to root out this chaos cult, so they think. And of course, Celine is happy to respond to this, because for her, anything that isn't a perfect worship of the emperor of mankind is something that needs to be destroyed. She absolutely hates anything, as any good battle sister would. And it just wants to get in and destroy that evil, especially because this is one of their shrine worlds to, as you'll find out in a later video, some important things and an important relic that they do have. And so she's quick to bring a full force of her Sisters of Battle into this to try to take care of it. And so that brings us to this first part of what we're going to be doing. And this is going to be a bit of an open world campaign in the sense that I'm not going to predetermine the overall story arc. Instead, I know in my mind where everything is set, and then according to what happens in the battle reports, we'll have the story unfold. So know that the battle reports are the pivotal changes. So the first two battle reports, what is going on? Well, Celine organizes an initial strike force. Normally she would lead it because that's just her personality. She likes to lead from the front, but she wants to organize another strike force and kind of get her sisters ready, but she doesn't want to wait too long. So she basically gets one of the sister superiors to put together a force and go into the underhives. And it's kind of a double purpose. It is partly scouting and partly eradication. She believes that the force should be strong enough to eradicate the cult because, hey, they've got power armor and they've got their faith, they've got their bolters and their blessed flamers and meltas and everything like that. And they're ready to go in there and root at this cult. So she sends in that first group and then prepares her own larger strike force to kind of follow suit once they can come out and give some reports on the numbers and all that. It's hard for them to communicate while they're down there because it's just so deep underground, and it's just hard to get communications back and forth, especially because of all the interference from all the industrial stuff going on, and then of course the planet itself, because you go a lot underground, it's hard to get Vox communications through, right? Because they just don't know how to use their technology properly. And so this first strike force goes in, but they discover a very unsettling truth. The reason that this cult has been so successful in spreading and so successful in repelling the local garrison and the local Astra Militarum and the forces and all the local authorities basically is because it's not actually a chaos cult. Not that a chaos cult is something to be trifled with, but it turns out that they find that it's actually a gene stealer infestation. Now, gene stealer infestation is in some ways scarier than a chaos infestation. A chaos infestation, of course, is very scary. If the cult can get big enough and they can cause enough trouble, then the people of the world could fall to chaos. And if enough people fall to chaos, and of course, and enough bloodshed is wrought, then of course that calls on the powers of the chaos gods, and demons will start pouring out, and that would be bad for the Sisters of Battle too. But it's something that they're very familiar with and very used to dealing with, and in the past have been able to take care of, because that is their calling. That is what they're there for. But a gene stealer infestation is something they're not familiar with. They do know what the Tyranids are, and they have heard of these gene stealer infestations. But the reason a gene stealer infestation is such a worrisome thing to discover is by the time you discover that there is a gene stealer infestation, they are everywhere. And it is hard to track down all of them because you can find the active cults and destroy them, but if you destroy enough of them, then the gene stealers will just go into hiding and slowly build back up their membership, their worshippers, as they hypnotize and mind control more of the populace. The other thing that's really hard about a gene stealer cult is that once they start breeding, which is what they do, once they get to a 4th generation gene stealer, in other words, a gene stealer implants its genes, and then that they have children, and then they have children, and then they have children, so the 4th generation, those ones look human, and they're almost indistinguishable from humans. And so they could be anywhere in the population, anywhere, at any level, just infesting. So the fact that they've found it means that it has spread to a critical level, because the gene stealers would not show themselves if they didn't have confidence that their strength was strong enough. We're going to spend a storytime interlude talking about gene stealer cults and how they operate and everything like that. But just suffice it to know that if it gets strong enough, then it'll attract the attention of nearby hive fleets. And once the hive fleet is attracted to a world, it is very hard to defend that world. The best way to defend the world is to root out the gene stealer infestation before they can get to that critical mass where their psychic beacon will pull them in. And so they discover this, and they also discover another very unsettling truth while they're down there. And I'm not going to tell you what that is. That's going to be revealed later on. But let me just say this. It's terrifying enough for them to completely abandon any attempt to try to destroy the base of operations that they do find down there. And they do find a base of operations being led by the Patriarch itself, which is the leader of the gene stealer cult. But they don't even try to attack it because of this other truth that they found. So instead, they turn around and they start trying to make their ways out of the underbelly of this hive world. Of course, the gene stealer cult, knowing that they have discovered one of their very important truths, is not going to want to allow them to get back to the surface to warn the other sisters, to warn the planet and the garrison and everything else that's there, because it would just be bad news for them for that information to get out. And so they send all their forces, or at least as many forces as they could muster, to crawl through the hive and try to ambush these Sisters of Battle. And so that'll be mission 1A, is going to be this first strike force of sisters trying to get out of the Underhive. It's going to be played in the Zone Mortalis, or on the Zone Mortalis board, which is the Forge World tiles that have all the walls and doors and makes everything very claustrophobic. And that also mission 1B is going to be the same thing. It's going to be played in Zone Mortalis, but that's going to be Canoness Celine's strike force going in, because no matter what happens in 1A, it has delayed them from getting back, and so she's starting to worry about what's going on and why she hasn't heard from them, so she preps her strike force to go on in. Of course, if they, in 1A, they don't get out, she will be blind to what she's actually going into. So there's mission 1A and 1B, both of them being played on the Zone Mortalis table, and both of them being very close quarters with the Gene Stealer cult versus the Sisters of Battle. Now, just understand that we're going to be using a custom Gene Stealer cult codex for this to work, and so I'm kind of modifying some of the Tyranid rules so that we can kind of simulate a Gene Stealer cult, because there is no supplement that really gives all the rules for it, at least not at the time of making this video series. And so go ahead, there's 2 links in the video description below, mission 1A and 1B. 1A, of course, is available for free on YouTube, and 1B is available in the MiniWarGaming Vault. And so if you are not a MiniWarGaming Vault member, we encourage you, once you're finished watching mission 1A, to click on mission 1B. You can get a 7-day free trial and get instant access to that next mission, and also access to everything else that's in the MiniWarGaming Vault. We hope that you'll stay. You can get it for as cheap as like $3 a month, so it's not that expensive, and it really helps support us. It is what allows us to do this. We don't make enough money from advertising on YouTube or other things. It really is, the majority of our revenue comes from our Vault members. So if you are a Vault member, thank you very much for supporting us and allowing us to make these videos and to keep the lights on and everything else. So go ahead and click the links below to start watching the Utgard Infestation, and happy wargaming.